just simply acknowledging the fact that what we do are products. The lengths that we have gone to over the past, 15 years or so, to avoid referring to anything that is produced by any Eclipse project as a product. We have packages. You probably have heard us talk about the different packages of Eclipse software, which bring the output of various projects together and present them as a single thing that we've very carefully avoided calling a product. I've decided personally, and I'm getting some support from the community, that it's time to stop doing this. It's time to start acknowledging that what we're producing are actually products and change some of our focus. Our focus has been, let me back up a little bit. I guess it comes as a great surprise to a lot of people. Certainly when I go to a Java 1 or I speak to large communities of Java developers, it comes as some great surprise that we don't produce anything that we consider to be a product. For years, people downloaded the Eclipse SDK and never thought for a second what SDK stood for. The Eclipse SDK, that was what you downloaded for, probably more like 8 or 9 years of Eclipse, was a product, or was a product, right there, I just used the word, is a tool for building products based on Eclipse technology. Right? But people would download the Eclipse SDK and they would just use it to build Java programs. They were pretty happy that it was just a product. Most of the people who use the Eclipse IDEs don't really care about open source or projects. They just have a tool that they get and they think it's a product. So what is a product? A product is something that's produced by labor, something a person or thing produced by or resulting from a process. These are several dictionary definitions that I pulled up just to give myself some kind of level set of what is actually a product. And it turns out, I think, almost all of our projects produce something that fits one of these descriptions or all of these descriptions. Again, as I said, the fact is that most of our teams or project teams do produce products. The target audience for these products are sometimes different. Sometimes these products are APIs and frameworks that are used by adopters and people building other solutions based on the technology. Sometimes those products are for the user community. In fact, the Eclipse IDE, we have an estimated 6 million users of the Eclipse IDE, and virtually all of those people consider it a product. But then we have other projects as well that are producing, Eclipse Link producing a library for doing object relational persistence mapping. There's some neat stuff. That is absolutely a product. And in fact, if you take a step back, and I've been the steward of the Eclipse development process now for, I can't even remember how many years now. Really, fundamentally, if you're familiar, and actually who is familiar, at least vaguely, with the Eclipse development process? Who's ever heard of the Eclipse development process? Bet you weren't aware there'd be audience participation. Okay. Has anyone actually read the document? Okay. I'm so sorry. But if you are familiar, at least familiar with the document, it really is about how one goes about building software products in an open source context. There is structure to the process. We have a well-defined process for going through a review. In fact, I'm going through an extremely frustrating period in my year where I am trying desperately to get all of the projects that are participating in the Neon simultaneous release process to engage in this release process. The process is formal, but it's not particularly onerous. A project team is expected to be able to tell me what their release includes, maybe highlight different issues. Are there architectural or security issues? They're required to tell, I say tell me, but they tell the entire community, disseminate this information to the entire community. This is what the release is, this is what it contains. That release checkpoint is also a point where we look at the project's intellectual property tracking process. Are they using the third-party libraries that they're using? Have they been vetted by the IP team? Can somebody download and use these products and incorporate them into their own products with confidence that they're not going to have litigation coming. So we use these. We have this formal review process, and again, that I'm very heavily engaged in today, which is why I look distracted if you see me around the conference. That is really about being very formal, very structured, and really competing on a real level with commercial processes and products. In fact, if you look at a lot of the infrastructure and support that we provide, the CI infrastructure that we provide for our projects to use rivals that of many internal systems that other big companies put together for their proprietary software. We provide a great deal of services, and again, all based around the Eclipse development process is at the center of them, and it's all about doing real product work in open source. Just for fun, I thought I would give you a list of some of the things that people have called the Eclipse IDE when they contact me and ask for a price quote, which happens with disturbing frequency. I get lots and lots of people asking me, hey, I want 3 licenses of Eclipse, how much that's going to cost? So Eclipse is actually probably the simplest thing people ask for. If someone asks for Eclipse, that usually means Java Development Tools, JDT. But yeah, so, and they're creative. I don't know exactly. Some of these are not too weird. The Eclipse 3.5, oh, I guess that's 3.5.2. They just forgot the periods. Very often it's a purchasing department has been told by some developer that they need something, and the purchasing department person really has no idea what they're doing, so they, or what it is, so they contact me and ask. But then they get increasingly weirder and weirder. The Eclipse Apache and GPL was one of my favorites. I'm not sure exactly why GPL was in parentheses. The SUT version, I'm not sure what that is. Then I get weird things. I actually get requests for quotes for aircraft and bicycles and things too. Because people come to our website, they're having trouble with their MP3 player. And they just search Eclipse, they come to our website, and obviously our website tells the casual viewer that we're all about MP3 players. And then they contact me. But anyway, so these are just some of the ones I get. They do get, some of them get progressively weirder. I probably should update this slide. I've had a couple of really strange ones lately. So one of the things that it took me, I'll admit, a long time to accept, and it was actually, frankly, it was a Java 1 last year. I did a talk. We had an audience of a modest audience, maybe 150 people in the room, and they were, Java developers coming to learn about what was new and exciting in the Eclipse IDE. And I think 2 of them had really any interest in open source. It really struck me as weird because in my circle, everybody cares about open source. But if you go outside of that circle and you talk to people who just do Java development, they know that open source is this free stuff that they can use. Most of them have no concept of licensing or the implications of using a GPL library with an MIT library with a, nobody knows, most people just don't even know or care about these issues. And I've listed just a couple of things that we as developers in the Eclipse community need to start understanding better. Our users really just don't care about products or projects. They don't care about the open source projects. When someone comes to download the Eclipse IDE for Java developers, they really don't care that the eGit project contributed the Git integration into that. They don't really care that the Web Tools project is what provides the XML editors. They don't care that, what's another one? ECF provides a communication layer that P2 uses to go and talk to update sites on the eclipse.org server. Right? They don't care about those kinds of things. All they care about is this product that they have in front of them. And I've been talking with projects a lot about recognizing that fact. Like you will notice if you go into the Eclipse IDE, you will never see the word eGit anywhere, except in the About. Or in the About dialog, there's a means of seeing all of the contributors of all the pieces, where they all come from. There you will see the eGit project has contributed certain functionality. But when you open up the Git staging view, it's a Git staging view. It's not an eGit view. Right? That's actually progress. We have in the past have these project names surface all over the place. And it's still, like we've done a really good job over the last little while of purging them out. but they still exist in certain places. I'm going to try not to call out anybody while I speak today. Chances are one will slip out. I'll apologize in advance to whatever project I call out. Most people who use Eclipse IDE and Eclipse software, Eclipse Che, Eclipse Dirigible, all of these wonderful IDEs that we have, all these other products that we have, really don't care about committers. They don't really care about a committer community. Most of them will interact via Stack Overflow. One of the curious things that I see is if somebody has questions about Java development using Eclipse, you see a lot of that in Stack Overflow, but a lot of the questions are directed at Eclipse because they're having trouble with an Android R file or something, which, we actually now we can't punt that one anymore because we have the And More project, which has brought all of the Android development tools into an Eclipse project, and now we are actually producing products that do Android development, so it's a little harder to punt, but for a while it was like, it's not really us. The really frustrating thing is people don't really know, they know that they're having a problem, so they'll open up a bug, they don't really know where to, they go into our bug system and of course have no idea where to go, so they open up bugs against JDT. So the JDT team, in addition to doing all of the great work that they do to build Java development tools and triage bugs that have to do with Java development tools, they actually triage bugs for almost every other project that has anything to do with an IDE. So they constantly taking bugs and moving them to somebody else. And that's really, I think, just a failure of our community to understand that the average user doesn't care. They want to, a lot of them do actually want to create bug reports for us, but we don't really help them very well. Right? And this is something we're getting better at. And I said earlier, they don't really care that the Eclipse IDE is composed of a whole bunch of open source projects. Most of our users don't care about the simultaneous release. Who knows about Neon, the simultaneous release? Okay. See, everybody here probably should, because we're inside the community. But outside of that bubble, people will know about Eclipse Neon because we use that in our marketing. But Neon is really kind of a code name for internal use, or is it? Right? That's actually a bit of a gray area one. I don't know. Certainly, I'm of the opinion that project names mostly are code names. Right? People don't care about, they want Eclipse 4.6. They don't want eGit. They want Git integration, right? But they don't know the project names aren't necessarily interesting. At the end of the day, end users just want to get stuff done. So they do understand free. Some probably do want to contribute. They probably don't know how. They just don't want to know how. I don't know. Anyway, again, users just generally want to use the software, and this is something that our developers are really, we actually have a handful of people in our community that really get this and are really pushing hard, and I'm really encouraged by it. We've come a long way. We've got some more work to do. Where are we here? Users don't really understand our software. I get a lot of questions. emo@eclipse.org. Do this as an experiment. Go to our website and try to figure out how to contact us. It's not that hard, but you have to go to the contact us and you have to navigate it. There's a phone number there that says don't call. But if we don't provide support. If you need support, go to the forums. And daily we get calls from. I hear our administrator picking up the call and having a very frustrating 15-minute call with a very frustrated developer who's looking for technical support. Users don't really understand this whole notion of open source and open source. A lot don't. A lot of people are looking for more of the traditional proprietary software where they have somebody they can call and get immediate phone support. And we just don't have the capacity to do that in open source. And I would love to figure out how to do that. If anyone has any thoughts about how we might actually be able to do that in the problem is we don't have millions of dollars to invest in solving the problem, right? Anyway, I have some thoughts about it, but they're a little bit weird. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. Anyway, the number of requests that I personally get for people who, I want to have Java and C++ development tools. Do I need to download two different things? Right? A lot of people just don't get that you can plug in things into Eclipse. It doesn't help that we spent a great deal of effort a few years ago trying to convince people, no, they're not plugins, they're bundles. Right? When they're really components, right? And it's like, okay, we're not helping ourselves. People understand the notion of a plugin. Plugin is not, the problem is we overload the terms too. Plugin is very specifically, plugin and bundle are the same term in OSGI parlance for those people who understand that kind of stuff. But ultimately, a plugin is really a conceptual thing, right? I've got some functionality that I want to add into my environment, right? So people understand that notion if you explain it to them. But a lot of people still don't get that you can assemble Eclipse however you want. Marketplace, we have who knows about the Eclipse Marketplace? Good. All right. The Eclipse Marketplace, who knows that you can actually just take one of the install icons and just drag it and drop it on top of Eclipse, and it will automatically install that. And you can also take those, if you go to a Marketplace entry, there is a way to get the HTML code that you can put into a blog post and make it so from your blog post you can say, hey, install this new feature from Eclipse, and right from your blog post they can drag and drop install into Eclipse. Right? So we have these, we've made some advances in terms of making this kind of extensibility much easier through the marketplace, but who has used the P2 software installer? Right? When you go install new software, window, install, because a window menu, of course, install new software, and then you have this thing that mortals should not be exposed to, right? I don't like it's great that we have that functionality, but we need to take the next step and refine that and make that more useful for users, and that takes the form of the marketplace right now. But we still have that extra entry. So now we have marketplace and install new software. This is an opportunity for improvement that we need to figure out an answer to. So users don't know what P2 is. They don't know what update site's actually not too bad. I try to refer to things in terms of software repositories because I think people understand software repository or something along those lines, rather than talking about specific technologies. Because again, P2 was a project name. Now it's actually P2 has been merged into Equinox, which of course is completely meaningful to only about 4 people in the room. So P2 is a code name, right? So when you talk to an Eclipse person, an Eclipse developer person, they understand what P2 is. They don't really understand anything about P2, but they at least know what it is. But the average Java person doesn't care, doesn't know. And I think this is actually a completely legitimate question. Do we actually care about users? And I think the answer is yes. And a lot of the people that I've been speaking with say the answer is yes. And I'm seeing really positive direction, really positive action in this. But again, ultimately you have to ask that question. If you are running an Eclipse project or an open source project in general, I think this is a question you have to ask yourself and have an honest answer. Do you care about the user? Some people just don't. And that's okay, right? Eclipse Link, I brought that example up earlier. Do they care about the user? They're not really a user-focused thing. They are a framework that you incorporate into your product, right? So are they, in fact, I don't think they surface very much user interface at all, right? So they don't care. That's okay. That works in that context. If you're building something that end users are supposed to use, you need to care about the end user. Even if your software, maybe you're not distributing it directly yourself, having the ability to put decent messaging to the user, structuring your code and so that you can actually do multi-language support, things like that. These are things that you need to think about if you actually care about the user. Who has ever actually installed, just out of curiosity, who's installed a language pack onto Eclipse successfully? So everyone that did that actually completely understands English though, right? Have you ever tried to, can you imagine if you didn't understand, if you couldn't read English, Eclipse comes up and, okay, I want to install Eclipse in my language, okay. How do you even do that? How do you even start? How did you even figure that out? Like, who had their hands up again? How did you even figure out how to do that? Google. Yeah. Anyway, I think we do a really good job with translations. We have a really cool service for doing it, but we don't really help the user get it, right? So this is on my hit list. I don't want. I said I wouldn't pick on things, and I just picked on Babel. Did anyone know the Babel project? That's the project that does the translations, right? Again, code name. Nobody cares. Although Babel is a name that kind of makes sense in that context, right? Babel? Okay. So what is a product, really? When you think of a software product, what are you thinking of? I figure there's at least 3 different things that we need to think about. Quality software, naturally. Although I think there's lots of examples of proprietary products where this just isn't true. But anyway, quality software is something that we've always taken seriously at Eclipse, and I think we do a reasonably good job of this. It's a fairly complex, the Eclipse IDE is of course a complex bit of software, and it certainly has its challenges, and we have some bugs and whatnot, but in general, I think we have good quality, this is something that we expect out of projects as they move through our incubation phase and become graduated projects. We expect a certain level of quality. Of course, this is all overseen by a PMC. This is all stuff that, again, users don't care about. All they want is the quality software. Documentation and support. So again, I think we do a pretty good job on quality software, and we're continuing to improve there. And I think I'm encouraged, again, I'm encouraged by the uptake that the project teams are taking in terms of really attacking this. Documentation is somewhere where I think we're not horrible, but we certainly have some opportunity for improvement here. Documentation has certainly not been a high priority over the last few years, and this is something where this is an opportunity for us to improve. Support. I think support is something that people expect from a product. Today we have some support options. They are challenging. We didn't actually, if you went to eclipse.org/support about 3 months ago, that gave you a 404. So today you can actually go to eclipse.org/support, and it gives you some help. It's not great though, right? We're still an open source organization. I don't have millions of dollars to pay for a support organization, so we are working within the ability of the support organization, of what we can provide. So much of it is FAQ sorts of things. People go to support because they want to add features, so we got some references to Marketplace there and some common features that people want to install there. We have pointers to our forums. We have pointers to our long-term support stuff, but that's a little bit confusing for users too, so I'm trying to kind of encourage that to be a little bit more useful for the user community. Anyway, so for quality software, I'm running out of time. We've started this thing now where we do an every detail matters every year, and actually I think we've had some success here because of another problem that I had earlier this week. We opened this bug up. We opened it up for Mars. We opened it up for Neon, and what we do is we hang off of these bugs just sort of little things that we can do to improve things. We started off again, the idea was just start improving, get the little things out of the way, get the things that we can do done. The problem that I wound up having is Olivier Provost and I do this talk every EclipseCon, it seems, for the last little while, where we live fix a bug in front of everybody. Well, this year we sat down and looked for the bug that we could fix in a 35-minute time frame, and it's like, there's nothing easy here anymore. Right, all the easy ones are kind of getting scooped up. So I'm encouraged by that. So like little simple things like UI, text in the UI, and little quirky things are starting to get scooped up. The ones that we could find, there's still a lot there, but they were a little bit more involved than we could address in the time allowed. But anyway, so there's a couple of really cool things in the next release of the Eclipse IDE that we're pretty excited about. They allow users to discover plugins to edit a specific type of file. If you double click on a file that there's no immediate support in the environment, it used to just open up a system editor. Now you can configure it to do different things. By default, it'll actually open up Marketplace and search for plugins that will do what you need it to do. and give you an option to install them, which it's pretty cool. It's a little bit jarring at first, but I think once you get used to it, we may actually have to, this is another opportunity we may want to work on to smooth out that experience. But the experience is far better than the open up a system editor default that we always used to do. We're working on a consistent experience. So basically the idea is you start at the website, you go to the download page, you do a download, you do an install, all of the Eclipse IDE, of course, that's my primary focus with all of this. Right through to the welcome screen. The new welcome screen has been changed to look and feel more like our website, and the website's been kind of twisted a little bit too. So we kind of try to have a consistent experience through that whole process, right up to the hello world. We're trying to make the welcome screen actually more useful too. I'm not sure if we've quite hit that mark yet, but we're getting there. But anyway, the idea is to have more consistent. So rather than having a sort of a jarring, different experience once you start, the installer and the kind of feels like it's an extension of the website, or at least kind of has a similar look to the website. And then again, when Eclipse opens, it looks similar to the installer, similar to the website, more consistency for the user. I've mentioned this before, project names or code names. We tend to avoid them. Things like Scout, right? The Scout project is actually a brand name, right? So you would build a Scout application. There's exceptions, obviously, to this rule. Rihanna is another one. You would build a Rihanna application. But again, you don't go into the IDE. I don't go look for the eGit view. I want the Git integration. I want to do Git staging. I want to look at Git repositories. So we're trying to encourage projects, and again, having some success, encouraging projects to avoid using their code names, their project names. I tend to try and encourage, and we're trying very hard to encourage people to use Eclipse as an adjective, project names as an adjective, right? So the Eclipse IDE, the Eclipse community, the Eclipse Foundation. Same thing with projects, the P2 installer, the Higgins Identity Management, which Higgins is dead, but anyway. One that always comes to mind. I'm not sure why Higgins always pops into my mind when I'm looking for a project name. It's a cool name, I guess. Anyway, so we're looking for consistency with this, and again, project teams are embracing it. We actually had a challenge. What do you call the Eclipse product that provides C and C++ development support? CDT, right? So that's when so if you go into if you're actually opening up a file, you're going to open up a C++ file or a C file, right? So they do a really good job in the IDE. The project team was like, oh, well, we're eliminating CDT because we want to avoid using project names, right? And it's like, well, people know it. Like the community has decided that CDT is a thing, right? So that's sort of an exception. The download, where you'll see us increasingly start to refer to the thing that you download as the Eclipse CDT. And that's okay, because that's what people expect. If you go to Stack Overflow and look for Eclipse CDT, you're going to see it all over the place. But again, once you open up the IDE and you start working, I don't want a CDT editor. I want a C and C++ file editor, right? So that's the focus. Anyway, figuring out that balance is a bit of a challenge too. Again, because some of our project names have become brands, and fighting a community on branding is just a no-win battle. We're struggling with that with the Eclipse too, right? When I say Eclipse, everyone thinks Java development, right? So with the Eclipse JDT is another kind of brand, I think, that exists. But again, when I say Eclipse, you know what I mean. I mean IDE, right? But then Che is an IDE and Dirigible is an IDE. There's some confusion around that too that we need to sort out. Right. This is something that I find difficult to do too, right? Because we don't really have UI experts working on very much. It's usually software developers making decisions about how things are presented. And again, some projects are way better at this than others. In general, we're encouraging project teams to avoid jargony language. Speak language that the user understands. Don't assume that the user understands what your internal code names mean. And I'm going to avoid any examples because all of them are mean. And try to integrate seamlessly. And this is something that Eclipse is pretty good at. We have this distribution that we use internally. We call it the Eclipse man, bear, pig because we can't pronounce the German word that that Ed Merckx used to put it together. But if you basically take Eclipse and you install all of the plugins that are available in the simultaneous release into it, it is a horrifying mess. And a lot of it is, like, oh, I'm just going to add 4 buttons to the toolbar, and I'm going to add 14 menus, and I'm going to add all these views, and those views have to be part of the Java perspective. And if once you do that, scaled up to 70 or 87 different projects, it's a horrifying mess, right? So figuring out good seamless integration as you increase the number of projects or number of, there I did it myself, the number of products that you incorporate into your IDE is a challenge that is an opportunity for us to do better. This is one that I've been kind of stalled on a little bit at this point in time, but we don't ship a JRE. Okay, so you want to install Eclipse? Okay, student, I know this is your first year in university, or your first programming course. Okay, so what I need you to do is I need you to go to the Sun website, sorry, the Oracle website, because I keep saying Sun first and I have to correct myself. Go to the Oracle website and download a JDK, because you're going to need that. Or I guess you could get a JRE if you wanted, if you're just doing C++, but if you think you might be using C++ now and then doing Java later, you probably should get the JDK now. All right, so go get that, install that, and once that's done, then you can go and get Eclipse. Now, okay, unzip it. Okay, now we have an installer, which makes that a little bit easier, and that's a little bit cooler. And now you get, now you can get started, right? The number of emails that we get, the number of times you see people, hey, I got an error code 13. What's error code 13 mean? Oh, you downloaded the 32-bit version of the Java runtime, but the 64-bit of the Eclipse, and those don't work together very well. You need to do this, right? So the number of times I have that conversation, the number of times, go to the Newcomer forum and look at the number of times you have that conversation. Why can't we ship a JRE? There's actually answers to that question, but what's that?
What's the problem?
What is the problem?
I still can't figure out.
The problem is that we have requirements. Yeah, well, it's actually more provenance. The licensing actually isn't necessarily the problem, although OpenJDK is GPL, which is a problem. This may not be as hard as we think, though. We're working on it. We're working on solutions to this problem. Yeah, anyway. So it's more of a provenance checking problem. We can't confirm the intellectual property of every piece of the JDK. Anyway, this is a problem that we want to address. Documentation. Where am I at? Oh, I'm over. Am I?
2 minutes left.
2 minutes left. Okay, let's go quick. We have a bunch of bugs open for documentation. Most of it's high level at this point. Having an actual aggregated, new and noteworthy. Someone wants to come to our website and find out what's new in Eclipse IDE. We actually have an answer for them as of Mars. Before you could go and dig into the download site and find the M7 build of the Eclipse SDK, and from there get a hook into the new and noteworthy, the 7 new and noteworthy documents for the 7 different milestone builds of the Eclipse SDK, and find out what was new in the Java development tools, right? So now we've decided to take that information and put it into a single document and make it really easy to find, so a user can actually go and find it. Did anyone actually notice that document for Mars? I spent a lot of effort on that. Just put up your hand. Just make me feel better. All right, cool. But anyway, so I'm working on that for Neon as well, and that depends on the CDT, the PDT, PHP development tools, JDT projects, providing me with good documentation, and most of them do. So I've actually got a lot of that done already, and there's still more work to do, of course. And there's a lot of other different things on the list that honestly I'm not sure we're going to get to for Neon, but they're certainly on our minds. Welcome screen. You see, again, it looks a little bit more like our website. That's actually an old screenshot. It's a little bit nicer than that. We're trying to make that actually more useful. What does everyone do when you open up your first, you install a new Eclipse, you run it, close the welcome screen, and then start working, right? Like that's kind of the mode, yeah. So we're trying to make it so you might actually want to keep that open for a little while. We're working on, we had started an effort to modernize the help system, because it's, the 90s were awesome, but we need to do something more there. I'm not sure that work's going to get done yet soon for Neon. Well, I'm pretty sure it's not going to get done for Neon, but we're working on it. The new and noteworthy entries. Marketplace entries, I'm encouraging project teams to actually make marketplace entries, and again, focus on things. SQL development tools. This is not the data tools enablement code, right? What do I want when I go to marketplace and I want to do SQL development? I want the SQL development tools, right? So naming things, naming these entries in reasonable ways to make it so reasonable, like normal people can actually do something with them is important. And product documentation, we need to start treating, well, it is a first-class artifact. We just don't update, it's not updated consistently. Maybe it's time to get technical writers involved. Maybe it's time to spend some money on it. We need to, this is an area of opportunity at this point. And support, as I mentioned earlier, if you have any ideas regarding how we might do better support in an open source context with limited funds, I'd be curious to know about them. My email address is wayne@eclipse.org. If you think of anything, drop me a note. And yeah, so this is the entry point that I talked about already. This is the support page that we've got. This is the best I could come up with right now. I continually review it and see if I can come up with better ways of representing this information. Our software developers need to get out of the habit of saying, where's the patch, right? If somebody asks for a feature, I think not everybody is capable of necessarily providing a patch. Those who can, I don't think it hurts to ask, but there's a certain arrogance sometimes in the way our developers, the way our committers ask. Someone has the audacity to ask for a feature or report a bug, and the answer back is, give us a patch. Anyway, there's nicer ways. Most end users cannot and will not provide a patch, but it's still nice to hear from them and get that bug report. Right? We need to actually know what problems we have so we have a fighting chance of addressing them. And I think, okay, so participation in the end user forums. Our end user forums are the the place where we provide, the Eclipse Foundation provides. If as a project committer, you're interested in actually helping users, a lot of them hang out in Stack Overflow. If you're working on a different, if you're not working on an IDE kind of project, you should probably know where your community plays, and hang out there. Make sure that when people ask questions about your open source project, that somebody is actually there to answer the question. We have a community of people who just hang out on the Eclipse Newcomer forum and answer questions, like guys like Eric Rizzo, who is not a committer, just answers questions all the time. He just sits there. I'm not sure he just sits there, but he is very active in those in those forums and very helpful, and just because he wants to, right? It's awesome. If we all just sort of stepped in and spent 30 minutes every once in a while, we could do an awful lot for our user community. And again, that was the question. What does real open source support look like? I'm not really quite, right now I think it's forums and Stack Overflow. I would love to see, it's an opportunity, I think, to expand that definition. Levels of support. Right now we have free support. There's paid support opportunities, I think. Our organizations, large organizations deploying lots of software to lots of different developers. I think there's an opportunity there to sell service contracts. Long-term support, right now long-term support is not what most end users think of. It's something more for adopters and large organizations to take advantage of, but we certainly have some opportunities there as well. With that, sorry for the rapid fire of the last few slides. That's it for my formal presentation. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to discuss this. In fact, I would love for this just to be the start of a conversation. If not now, certainly grab me out in the exhibit hall or wherever. If you see me, have any questions or want to talk about things or suggestions, please bring them forward. Anyway, with that, I'll end the formal presentation. I thank you for your attention. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference, and have a good rest of your day.